happy, and I see them go to school, and they're skipping down the streets, and nobody always looks up there. I don't think they really care. No, it's common. Yeah, that's just common.
Just gonna rev up. And then we can. Oh, is the coffee on? Somebody make coffee?
Yeah, we made some in the.
Sorry, reach out there and send it up.
Oh, let's keep it, because y'all
It's some new stuff. I need some new stuff in there.
I've been here since Sunday.
I think it was really cool.
Oh,
So it looks like tea. So
Okay, yeah,
just interesting.
it's just a shower.
Chris said he was gonna join us tonight.
It's Jeffrey.
Yeah. He was kind of on a layover, must have been volleyball or something. Oh, drama, that's it.
I don't know, no, it's more late. It's like to me, maybe they're. She had something every minute this week, so. Yeah.
Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you for all coming. Bella, you're supposed to be napping, right? I heard a rumor. Anyhow, I guess I should get on camera here. Camera. That's sorry, reference to an old show. My task, calling job for better sake of a word tonight, is to play connect the dots. Remember that you used to get those as a kid? Did you like doing the connect the dots things? You never knew what it was. And now you can get grown up ones out to like 700 connect the dots, and it's this intricate matrix of ideas that just draw the picture already. But it's like puzzles, Shelley. The picture's on the box. I don't know why you spend the hours you do putting the puzzle. It's already when puzzles were invented, there was no picture. You just got the pieces. And it was quite, it was maps, because that was kind of how they started with before printing. And they would, anyhow, I looked at the history of puzzles one time. So, nonetheless, to connect the dots, and the challenge of the dots is that we live here in 2026 with all its complexities. So 2 weeks ago, we looked at the spirit of the age. What is the zeitgeist, as they called it? But can anybody remember some of the thoughts we had about what was the spirit of the age? It's interesting. As I talk to people, I say, how have people changed since COVID? And I was at Tip Top Tailors and asking the clerks, because they deal in retail all the time. And she said, people are a lot shorter, less patient, and less inclined to talk. They want to get in, get their business done, and get out. And she said, some Saturdays, I'm booked and swamped, and people are just, and they just leave. So I thought that was an interesting. And then I asked the waitress at Corona's, and she said people are less talkative. They're far more reserved. So interesting observation. So anyhow, what would you say is the spirit of our age?
Technology.
Yeah, very tech dependent, right? Yeah, which creates a distance. We're more inclined to use our phones than to have conversations with people. We were talking about that with group family chats. Okay, yeah, good. Tech dependent.
Instant society.
Sorry, instant? Yeah. We want it. We don't. Patience is a thing of the past. Yeah, everything's got to be now. Good. Anything else?
Affluence.
Yeah, especially in North America, we live better than our parents or grandparents. Julius Caesar would be envious of us. Yeah, we can get strawberries in February. Nobody did that. Like up until not that long ago, you didn't get strawberries in February. Good, affluence.
Is there one we're missing?
Whatever you think. I would say we're a fragmented society. Very divided, right? Not just into two camps, we're divided into dozens and dozens and dozens of camps with divided loyalties.
Busy. They only talk about how busy we are.
Yeah. Yeah, we almost define ourselves by it, don't we? Yeah. Well, years ago, and not to sound like being waxing nostalgic, but you didn't travel that much, right? Now it's the car works, the gas, off we go. 5 hours here, 4 hours there, off to When would you have gone to Nanaimo to a hockey game? If you think about it, that was like, we'll hop on a plane, we'll go to a hockey game. Yeah, so busy and full. And travel, right? It's part of it.
Individualistic.
Yes, highly individualistic, right? Almost to a point of discord. Everybody's playing their own song on the piano at the same time. Yeah, yeah. Anything else you can think of? I think we've entered the crazy era. Everybody just seems a little crazier than before. Like, they're caught in their cranky, they're doing this, and nothing against purple and blue hair, but just every woman over 30 has a tattoo now, or maybe even over 70. I don't know. But there's a certain just a wildness in the wind with people. There's an unchecked and unrestrained. Uh, I don't know. Yeah.
Next level.
What's that?
Next level.
Yeah, yeah, Harlan. It's a next level wildness. Yeah. Anyhow, so this is the age we live in, and then this text that we love and honor, we don't worship it, but was written 1900 and some years ago. So we go back to the Roman world, and we go back to a time before so much of this, way back in, let's say 65 A.D., where they thought the world was Rome. They had a very small view of the world. We talked about the difference of time. And so the job that we have is to, somebody would say, well, why are you sitting studying this ancient book? It's like, remember in school when they made you read Shakespeare? How did you feel about that? It's like, yeah, it's like, why are we doing this, right? Oh, to be or not to be, that is the question. Why am I studying this? And your poor English teacher, they were trying to connect the dots to you. You're 18 years old. Remember, they made us read Test of the Dubervilles. They do, Harlan. And you, as parents, paid for that. So the job is to connect the dots and to see not just the relevancy, but the interconnectedness, and then throughout the ages, how this timeless text. So I'm going to show you a video to start with. And then I'm going to take you back, and I think in a heartbeat, you might just be able to connect the dots tonight. So we're going to start with a video called Kat Kerr Still Talking About Christmas Town. Kat Kerr is this, I'm not even going to use the word prophet, but she's been to heaven hundreds of times. And again, this is all in quotes. And she's talking about one of her trips there and about Christmas Town.
Hey everybody, Sean here, and welcome to Revealing Truth. And special thanks to Mark Scott for sharing this. The original video was actually removed, but one channel had a copy of it. And it is a long video, so today we're just going to put together a bunch of statements that Kat is making. If you watch the whole thing, it's one of the most outlandish videos yet, which is probably why they took it down.
Yes, I'm excited because we're going to talk a little bit about Christmas Town, and you segued perfectly into one of our first questions about Christmas Town, which is from Elijah, and he's 13, and he wants to know, is it Jesus' birthday every day in Christmas Town?
I can tell you, it is one of the main things talked about in Christmas Town because that's why it was made. That was God's idea for Christmas Town, was to celebrate Christ and to bless families and people to come there together. And they worship Christ, of course. Even the stars on the trees. Yes, they have Christmas trees. The ornaments are little stars, and they sing. That's why it looks like, if you zoom in on that picture, you'll find out that their mouths are open because they're worshiping Jesus Christ. There's a lot of fun things to do there in Christmas Town. So it's a wonderful place to visit, a place to have fun. And Jesus many times does visit Christmas Town himself. So it's a special event when he does show up there in person, that everybody gets to see him. They'll run after him. They'll hug him. So it's a beautiful thing. Sometimes he'll give gifts out to the children himself. And so Christmas is welcomed in heaven, on earth, as it is in heaven. That's what I say about it. You need to understand about heaven. Everything is alive. In other words, it has a personality, it speaks, the trees do, it talks about the trees singing, they worship, even the rocks cry out. There's pebbles on this one path going into the friendly forest, and every pebble, when you go by it, jumps up and down and starts worshiping Christ. So that you see that life is in many things. The trees have faces, many of them in the friendly forest. They talk to you, the boulders talk to you. This is the way of life. It's not earth, okay? It's way beyond earth. The snow is alive. Whatever you build in heaven out of snow comes to life. So sometimes you'll see some of the prophets involved there. They also love to be there. Jesus comes and visits there a lot. It's a place that everybody wants to go to and even live there. There's mansions also in Christmastown and around the area. A lot of people that love snow, they want to live there because of the snow being there. So it's really a wonderful place.
So when you go up to up to heaven, I know you talk about the Lord's given us each gifts that we love to use and that are just innate within us. So can we visit Christmas Town? So if I love to cook or love to bake, can I make something and then do I just think about going to Christmas Town, or how do I get there? And then can
Oh,
I
you
just
mean
drop
if you lived in heaven? If you lived in heaven, is
Yeah,
that what
if
you're
I
saying?
lived in heaven and I wanted to make something and give it as a gift in Christmas Town, so I made it, do I just think about going there and I'm there, or how would
You
I
just say it.
You just
You
say
would
it.
just say Christmastown. And instantly, there's different ways. Now, people are very different. You can step into these different kiosks they have all over heaven. Beams of light are shooting out of these. You would step into that light and you would say Christmastown, and it would shoot you to wherever Christmastown is. You'd step out another one of those kiosks and you would be there.
Wow, that's amazing.
Lots of times the Lord will give you a gift, and that garment that he gives you plays your very favorite worship song, and you get to wear it, and you wear it. The minute you put it on, it starts, the gown itself, the robe itself begins to sing and worship God. One other thing is you can speak with your mind in heaven, or you can speak with your voice. Most people choose your voice, but you can actually think things. If you go up to someone and you're saying, hello, my name is so-and-so, you can actually think that, and they would hear your thoughts. They may respond with thoughts, or they may respond with speaking to you. Your pets talk. And I'm telling you, when I heard that, I saw my own pets in heaven. I was undone that they were actually talking to me. And so all I can say is, be nice to your dog. Sometimes you go into just a glory elevator. An elevator will appear in front of you. When you've just passed away, your angel is with you. So they'll step towards the doors. It'll open. You'll step in it, and that shoots you all the way up to heaven. People literally in heaven ate cake on election day. They ate cake. And for enjoyment, you won't just go on vacation on the earth, the new earth. You'll get to visit planets without a spaceship and without a spacesuit. But I was taken to this ancient door. It was made with rock. There were no walls to it. There was no walls. You just walked through this ancient door. And when I did, I was out in space. I stepped out into space. And as far as I could see, stars and galaxies.
And at the end of the day, this is what it's really all about.
All right, Kat, I want to pull up your little Tumblr first because there we go. We
I
have a
have
picture
one
of it
myself.
too.
Here it is.
So you have this available right now?
We do have it available
Okay.
right now. It's in our store. You just go to revealingheaven.com, and that's where our store is, and you can buy many different things there.
So there we have it, folks. Another Christmastown fairy tale from Kat Kerr that leads to buying ridiculous products promoting this fairy tale place. And if we go to that site, she does indeed have that mug that you can buy for $14. This always reminds me of 2 Peter, and that in their greed, they will make up clever lies to get a hold of your money. And what's even more amazing is that people like the lady interviewing her seem to believe this. There's even one fan who's been to Christmastown as well. At least one person can see this is nonsense and it doesn't line up with Scripture. Because Scripture tells us that no one has been to heaven except Jesus. So anyone saying that they've been there is a liar and needs to be avoided. As I've said before, you can believe them or you can believe what God said in the Bible, but you can't believe both. Anyhow, we're going to leave it here for today, but as always, feel free to leave your comments below, and until next time, take care and God bless.
All right.
Her tumblers are in fact $14.
You looked them up?
She also has coffee cups that say "Don't do demons."
But she has been to Christmas Town. You like Christmas? Why not? But anyhow, more to the point, why? So, is there anything new under the sun? We are going to look at how do you deal with a problem like Colossae? Because what Colossae was talking about was people who had been to heaven and they'd seen angels and they had these words and this wisdom and this knowledge, and they were undermining the message of the gospel. So, despite the time frame, the connections are hopefully very clear. So, why do we study books like Colossians? Because the world we live in is exactly what's the same thing's happening. The language may be, from Greek to English, but the reality is that we are dealing with people who come into the church and say very similar things and who build ministries. And as Peter said, to milk you out of $14 and change US, so probably 20 bucks Canadian for. I do like that the shirt sings the music you like. You put on the robe and whatever you like. It's like a little Bluetooth thing on your pocket, but it plays. And then the rocks. Anyhow, if you want an interesting evening, listen to an evening of Kat Kerr. I'm not saying for good reasons, just for that's good. All right, let's take a look. Colossae, a first century synchronistic. In other words, all kinds of things coming into one. And what was happening in the church was that there were all these voices telling people that Jesus wasn't enough. It blended Jewish legalism, which we spent a lot of times last few months in Galatians, pagan philosophy, which we're going to look at tonight, and especially mysticism, which we're going to spend some time tonight in understanding. And ultimately, the whole thing undermined the sufficiency of Jesus. It promoted this way of living, of avoiding certain foods and certain behaviors, of angel worship, of rigid dietary rules. All of this became necessary for spiritual enlightenment, as Kat said, this is the way it is. So there's a little map where Colossae is. This is kind of Western Turkey. That's that little piece that sticks out into the Mediterranean. And you'll see Antioch. If you're familiar at all with the book of Acts and Paul's travels, these names may come to mind. And there's Colossae and Laodicea, which you might recognize from Revelation. There's Ephesus, the book of Ephesians is written to. Smyrna and Sardis, again, from the book of Revelation, Thyatira, another one in Pergamum. So those are the 7 cities that are mentioned in Revelation. And Colossae, you can see, is kind of off the beaten path a little bit. You'll see some major Roman roads called the Royal Road, which follow the Meander River all the way to the western coast of Turkey, and then all the way down to the southeastern border of Turkey, again on the Mediterranean Sea. So that's the place it was. It was a cosmopolitan place, very much like Toronto in that sense of a cosmopolitan. All right, let's take we're going to read a few texts tonight. Before we actually start, next week we'll start into Colossians properly. But before we study the book, we actually have to understand what was going on here. So we're going to read 4 texts, plus then quite a bit of a longer one. And what I want you to, just as you read them, take note of what was going on. So let's take a look. Example, the first one, chapter 2, verse 8. See to it that no one takes you captive through philosophy. So what was challenging the church? Bad philosophy, right? Okay, and then empty deception. So what would empty deception be versus full deception? Meaningless, yeah. A deception that really offers you nothing, like a magic trick, and it's gone. It's like, you ever watch those videos where they give a raccoon cotton candy and he washes it in the water and then it all melts and he's like, there's no cotton, because he thinks it's food. And empty deception, as soon as you watch it in the gospel, it's where to go, which is based on what? Human tradition. Okay, now our brains go, this is the whole Jewish thing, right? All the traditions of Israel and spiritual forces of the world. So we know that. And who is the driving force of the spiritual force of this world? Exactly. So Paul says, so what's the first thing? Based on that verse, what do we know was the problem in Colossae? Deception. Yeah, they were being deceived. And deception implies intention, right? It's one thing to make a mistake, but if I'm gonna, remember the old magic tricks you used to do with your kids, not a very good magic trick, but this one, there we go. I saw a really good magic trick today. Wait, hold tight. Yeah, boss. Phoenix. We don't have one here, but this is actually quite an impressive trick. You ready? There you go. Exactly. Wildly impressive. And that's it. They just keep hearing it. That's so deception. All right, take a look at 2:16. What was the problem? We're eating and drinking. Trouble. Yeah, but they were judging you based on it, right? Oh, you ate that. Oh, you drank that. Oh, you celebrated this feast, or you didn't celebrate this feast, or you didn't celebrate that. So this is very much Judaism, right? What you ate, what you drink, whether you do a certain feast or not, whether you celebrate certain traditions and holidays. So we know that there was a Jewish element. Okay, take a look at the next one, 18.
Worshiping angels.
They were worshiping angels. That's starting to sound familiar. So these people that worship angels. Once in a while you'll find a Christian whose house is like all angels everywhere. And you kind of go, maybe we should really talk about this a little bit. And nothing, but we got to be careful where it turns into veneration and worship, right? All right, next one, 2:20.
The law again.
Yeah, again, the law. So submitting to its regulations, right? But there's also a spiritual element, spiritual forces of the world. So we see this combination of legalism, food, drink, holidays, with philosophy and ideas, and then mysticism. So we get this weird connection of a false religion that had very strict rules, had a deeply mystical element, but also had a profoundly philosophical. So let's just read the context. Bonnie, would you read that larger section, 2:16 to 23? I pulled these out, but now I want you to hear it all together.
Therefore, no one is to act as your teach in regard to food and drink, or in respect to a festival or a new moon or a Sabbath day, things which are only a shadow of what is to come, but the substance belongs to Christ. Take care that no one keeps defrauding you of your prize by delighting in humility and the worship of angels, taking his stand on visions he has seen, inflated without cause in his fleshly mind, and not holding firmly to the head, from whom the entire body, being supplied and held together by the joints and ligaments, grows with a growth which is from God. Died with Christ to the elementary principles of the world. Why, as if you were living in the world, do you submit yourselves to decrees such as do not handle, do not taste, do not touch, which refers to all things destined to perish with use, in accordance with the commandments and teachings of man. These are matters which do have the appearance of wisdom in self-made religion and humility and severe treatment of the body, but are of no value against fleshly indulgence.
All right, if you were to summarize the challenge that was being faced in Colossae based on a quick reading of that, or not quick, but a clear reading of that, what would you say is the big problem? What was Paul fighting against, or why was he writing this book?
Deceived.
They're being deceived, right? Through a myriad of ways. We're going to examine some of that myriad tonight, because the other dot that we need to connect is what we believe was a massive connection to how we live. In other words, what's in here has a huge connection to what we do. Can you think of a good example where someone believes something positive that results in a positive lifestyle choice?
Healthy eating.
Sure. So I believe this is good for me, so therefore I make good choices. Good, really good example. Okay, can you think of another positive example?
Quit smoking.
Yeah. So we make some choices to do something positive or to not do something negative, right? That produce. So we believe that not smoking is good for you. I was talking with a man this week and said, so he wasn't feeling well. Said, so was the last time I had a physical? And he went, I said, maybe you should go get your blood tested. Because and he worked in a quite an aggressive field. I said, when the last time you get a tetanus shot? And he said, I think I was 15. I said, maybe you should get a tetanus shot. So what he believed had a potential link to certainly how he lived, right? Okay, can you think of negative? Oh, I guess we already did. So what was happening was Paul, the latter half of this book is very much about living the Christian life. And we want to jump to that, but we don't get to that until we solidify this. So they had all these false beliefs, worshiping angels and how they treated their bodies, what they thought about the spiritual realm, and it had a massive impact on how they were living. So correct belief should lead to, now, does it always? No, there are times we know what we should do and we don't do it. I recognize that. But the principle of Scripture laid down is that as a man thinks in his heart, so he is, right? As we believe, forgive as you have been forgiven. If I believe I'm forgiven, then okay, I think that point's established. My kids used to they would do this. Said, Dad, you beat the horse long enough. We get it already, you made your point. Okay, I'm just waiting for affirmation. So just nod if you get it, and I'm still going on. What we want to look at first off is some of the key elements, and then I want to draw your attention to the three false belief systems that created this false system that they were wrestling with in Colossae. And then once we understand that, then we can jump into the book properly. So the key elements were this. First, there was some sense of legalism and ritualism. And we saw this within Judaism, right? All the laws about washing your hands and doing this and not doing that and not touching, the light switch and not being able to brush your teeth and all this kind of stuff with kosher dietary laws and celebrating calendar schedules. So these practices, of course, were a shadow of things to come, Paul will say in chapter 2:17. The next one is the phrase asceticism. Does that word land familiar to you? Okay, Ethan, what's asceticism? Feel free.
Like a heart lifestyle. Like you shouldn't be comfortable to think that the actual physical things of the world are evil.
Exactly, yeah. So you should never enjoy the comforts of life. Your food should be rotten. Your bed should be hard. Your belt should have nails in it reversed. You should, self-flagellate every night with hyssop. Very, very. There was a group of people called the cynics. More familiar with the phrase cynical today, but they lived in dog houses, hence like canine. Cyrus the dog star, and so that's where all the language is rooted in. But they lived like dogs, and they were ascetic. They treated themselves quite harshly, so they were very regulatory, especially about diet and sex. They had very strict rules. Okay, the third one that we see in this, the passage you read, the worship of angels, the whole idea that we see this today. There are religions based on the visitation of angels, and of course the false humility that goes in and details about the visions they have and all the places they've been to. Then we'll get into this, but this idea of philosophical speculation, this human philosophy, which deceived them, and ultimately what it led to was the denial of Christ. Not as a person, but they denied his supremacy, which leads us to the big problem of Colossae and the big problem of today. And that is, it's not just Jesus, it's Jesus and. What ands do we add to Jesus?
The Bible.
That's hopefully a positive one.
Jesus and me.
Jesus and me, or you got to have Jesus and you have to have the right church. You got to go to the right church. It's not enough just to have Jesus. Or you got to not eat certain foods because Christians, they wouldn't eat Twinkies, right? Because that would just be forbidden, right? So Jesus and, we have people with very strict dietary laws, right? Um, or Jesus and certain rules. But many of us grew up in, there were rules in addition to that. So we kind of take Jesus and we add stuff to him. Or we might subtract stuff from him. But this whole idea of it wasn't enough to have, or you got to follow the right teacher, and you got to read the right books. It's not enough just to have the Bible. That's good, but have you seen what prophet so and so wrote? You got to read that as well, right? So we add to so extra revelation. Sure enough, but I had a superior revelation, or the prophet came and did such and Y, X and Y and Z. So you got to have that. That make sense? Good. All right. So the denial of the sufficiency of Christ. All right, there are three major influences in this thing. The first one is Jewish mysticism. The second one is Roman secret cults. And then one called Gnosticism, like Gnocchi. Gnocchi? What's the little white things? What are they called? Gnocchi? Gnocchi. And there's a G in front, though, isn't there? Yeah. I forgot my word. Gnostic. It's like a gnu, the little animal, the gnu. Yeah. Are the words that start with G, where the G silent?
No.
Golf? No. Yeah. Wouldn't golf be funny because it's all? So it says this is just here to scare the anti-Semites. Yeah, it's Yiddish. Yeah, this is just here to scare the anti-Semites. All right, let's take a look. So there's a little map there, and we're going to look at one example of Jewish mysticism called Merkabah. Today, Jewish mysticism is most often the school of mysticism that's called is Kabbalah. You might have heard that phrase before. Sometimes you'll see they'll have a red string around their wrist, very often a sign of someone who follows Kabbalah. All right, this is literally from the word to ride in the cart, but it's all stemmed from Ezekiel. So this is a tradition focused on the vision of the book of Ezekiel, which the prophet is seen in a heavenly chariot, drawn by four winged creatures. And the goal of these mystics is to recreate that experience and explore the heavens, to have heavenly encounters, and then bring heaven down to earth and sell a glass. I don't think they sold the glass back in those days. But this is Jewish mysticism, to the encounter with the heavenly realm, just like Ezekiel did. And so this picture beside you, which looks fairly random at all, will make perfect sense in a moment. So we have the vehicle of ascension, like Ezekiel's wheel within a wheel. Then we have the two tetradons opposing the direction, filling your body with light so you can elevate. We have Mer, which is the light, Ka, which is spirit, and Ba, which is bodies. So Merkabah, light, spirit, and body all working together within the triune nature of humanity. The celestial sphere, which is encountered, and then there's the physical sphere, the mental sphere, and the astral sphere. And the goal is to arrive in the astral sphere. So this is the whole way of it. So the teachings of the chariot were highly secret. So if you come with me and pay me, I will tell you the secret of the chariot so that you can ascend to heaven. This may sound familiar. And this doctrine was only entrusted to certain people who had qualified morally, behaved a certain way, of a certain age. You couldn't be too young, couldn't be too old. You had to be in that sweet spot in the middle. They would write all these these sermons, these homilies, which describe these multi-layered heavens guarded by angels, which were combined with these mystical experiences of ascent and union. And now at this point, you're all going, oh, right? That we make a journey to heaven in this Elijah-like cart, and then we draw these divine powers down to earth. What you will notice in every one of these, it's about power. These are all power religions. Mysticism wants to tap into the power of heaven to transform earth below. Now we pray, thy will in heaven be on earth as it is in heaven. That's what we're talking about. But this is so that I can take advantage of it for my own self, right? Wealth, power, control over people, insight into their minds. So this event would occur through the 7 stages into the 7 heavens. Does that sound familiar? Paul says, I know a man who ascended to the 7th heaven. Then there were 7 throne rooms that they would go through, and you would get there through a series of incantations, through citing angelic names, and then navigating certain spiritual forces that you would mystically navigate. They would recite these hymns into a trance state, and then they would use the secret names of God. So the idea is that we would get together and we would start singing these secret hymns, and then we would start chanting the sacred names of God that only we knew. And then that would enlighten us, and then our spirits would ascend into the 7th heaven, and we would be able to bring down this. So the ultimate goal was to have this vision of God enthroned among his angelic retinue, and thereby bring that mystical power down. Now, does that sound like anything familiar? Vaguely touches a few bases. We're going to ascend into heaven. We're going to trance ourselves. I did an experiment one night. You know trance music? Yeah. Are you familiar with trance music? Yeah, a little bit like that, but very intentionally. And what happens is if you do it long enough, your heartbeat actually starts to beat with the music. So on my little pulsy thing, and after about a half an hour, I lost track of time, and it was a really, really surreal experience. And I kind of went, "Oh, this is really cool." And then I kind of then after about 45 minutes, I thought, I think I should probably stop doing this. It is very surreal, but you see it in concerts, right? The musical, and also you see the whole crowd moving together, and eventually their hearts will actually beat in rhythm together. It's this trance-like state you get. So, and we're not talking like disco and Kiss, like we're talking a certain rhythm of music, just. It is. It's musical hypnosis because music affects our brains in a unique path, right? It connects all the parts of our brains. So, if you want to trip and not leave the farm or no medication, music will do that to you. You'll enter a trance-like state. And you will have this very mystical experience, and your body starts to fall into rhythm with it. It is quite. I don't. No, I mean, I don't know if you're exposing yourself to anything dangerous. It's a fascinating moment, though, to do it. I only did it once, but and you see kids, they'll sit in the dark, right? And they listen to trance music. You can just hear, and their whole or clubs. Now we have the club. No, they're not discotheques anymore. What are they called? Raves, yeah, yeah, and then you see the whole group, and they just move in rhythm together, right? And then you throw in ecstasy or whatever other drug, and it really elevates. What's that, Harlan? Yeah, yeah. Harlan, you're not going to. You haven't gone to a lot of raves in your life. No, appreciate that. Raves in Leader, are there? No, not that I know of. Yeah, but you see it. It's not uncommon. So that's Jewish mysticism. This was in Colossae because Paul talks about the worship of angels and secret knowledge. So we know that there was a Jewish community, and in Colossians, there are no references to the Old Testament. So we know that Judaism, like Galatians, wasn't an issue because Paul never uses that as a foundation, right? He speaks to this, not to traditional Torah observance. All right. Second one is Roman mystery religions. The Romans were a fascinating people on many, many reasons. But one of the things they had developed was a series of these mystery religions where, by practice and participation, the mysteries of the universe would be revealed. Why do you think that became important to them? Bella's like, let me out here. They want to power, right? And the world was mysterious. We understand that when the wind blows, right, we can predict why things happen. We understand, oh, you've got this infection. Okay, we understand microbiology. Somebody said that the discovery of microorganisms is the single most significant act in human history because it saved hundreds of millions of lives, right? The Romans, they didn't know, and like, the Middle Ages, like, why are you sick? Because you've got bad humerus. You've got too much black blood. Was it George Washington bled to death because the surgeons had bled him out, right? So you've got bad blood. You've got to bleed. That weird mindset, or the leeches. You've got, and you see these pictures of people being attacked because you got to get rid of your bad humor. What are the three humeruses? There's black, bile. Oh, come on, medical professionals. There's three colors of the humeruses. Anyhow, but life was a mystery. And so they needed to understand it. So they pursued religion as a means of understanding the world around them. And so these mystery religions purported to explain the universe to you. Because if you can explain it, what can you do? Now I can control it, right? If I can explain blood, now I can control it. I can prevent sickness, infection. So these mystery religions were an attempt to explain the universe so that you could control the universe and not suffer at its hand. So these mystery religions were one of three types the way the Greeks understood the world. One was the imperial cult. We've talked about that, the worship of Caesar. One was just this kind of ethnic religion that was tied to a nation or state. And then one was philosophy. Now, we mentioned that as well. And so civil theology worshiped the emperor. Natural theology, which was philosophy, speculated about the nature of the world, the nature of the divine, and then mythical or mystical theology explained the myths and the rituals and the mysteries. So between one, philosophy, which explained the way of the world, the state religion, which explained the way of government, and then mystical religions, which explained the way of the mystery. These three fused together to become the way the Romans saw the world. Today, we don't have philosophy, so we don't. You know what you get if you take philosophy? You get a job in philosophy. And I heard they were building a new philosophy factory down in Medicine Hat, so you could get good work down there. But there's not a lot of work for philosophers anymore. I have a friend with a doctorate in philosophy, and I'm not sure. He teaches other philosophy students. It's like a closed loop to me. Uh, it's like cello. You just, what do? You teach other kids how to play cello. It's kind of a closed loop. So this is this issue. So that was philosophy. And then, of course, mystery. All right, let's dive into it. I want to give you some examples. First there's Our Lady right there. She is Magna Mater Diem, the Magna, like the biggest, Mater being mother and Diem being God. She's the big mother God, so to speak. That's a really crude translation. But she was the source of all life and all natural life. So all livestock, plants, anything that lived in nature, she is the mother of all things. This is by the way, I picked the most polite picture I could find of her. She is the great mother of all the gods and of all the men. Can you think of another female god who is the mother of the gods? Isis in Egypt would be one of them, Isis and Horus. Yeah, I'm trying to think who's the mother of all the gods. Was that? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, the mother god. Anyhow, so this is a quote by her. The winds, the sea, the earth, and the snowy seat of Olympus are hers. And when from her mountains she ascends into the great heavens, the son of Kronos, that is time, himself gives way before her. And in like manner do all the other immortal blessed honor the dread goddess. So she is of immense importance. Shelley, you want to read the next thing about her son?
Alice
Yep.
was the good shepherd, the son of Sybil, the great mother, who gave birth to him without union with mortal man. At the death of Alice, which Sybil, how do you say,
Sybil, yeah.
mourned vehemently until he arose to life again in the springtime.
So what do we know about her? Her son. He dies. How was he conceived?
Supernatural.
Virgin conception, right? Or supernatural. Starting to sound familiar? Supernatural conception. He dies, and then he's raised to life. When? In spring.
Easter.
Easter. Very good.
Yeah.
You are ahead of the curve, Joyce, once again. Matter of fact, the celebration is held March 22nd to March 25th. Right around when we celebrate Easter. Okay, keep going, Shelley.
The Harvest Festival on March 22nd, an effigy of the god was fastened to the trunk of a pine tree, as the beings hanging on the tree.
So how did he die? He was hung on a tree. Okay, keep going.
Effigy was later buried in a tomb. March 24th, known as the Day of Blood, the high priest, impersonating added drew blood from his arm and offered it up in place of the blood of a human sacrifice, thus as her sacrificing himself.
So how were they redeemed? By what? Keep going.
That night the priest went back to the cave and found it empty. The God, having risen on the third day from the dead, and on the 25th, the resurrection was celebrated with great rejoicing.
So 3 days in the tomb, raised from the dead. You can see why this would filter into Colossae, right? They would hear the story of Jesus and go, this sounds like Attica and the great mother who conceived him supernaturally without the birth of a father. Good. One last point.
During this great celebration, a sacramental meal of some kind is taken. Initiates were baptized with blood, whereby their sins were washed away, and they were said to be born again.
So what do we have now? At Easter, we have baptism, baptized in blood. And what does the blood do? Wash your sin away, thereby you are born again. All on Easter morning. We're going to address some of this, but this starts to sound trickling familiar. Okay. So that's the first one that we'll look at. There's three that we'll focus on. There's lots, but these are the three that come into influence of Christianity. All right, and then Adonis. Sorry, when you hear the name Adonis, what do you think? Greek guy, yeah, the perfect, I'm not going to do this, but the perfect male, Adonis, broad shoulders, rippling abs, those kind of things, that, and Adonis, he's beautiful. All right, Adonis was a short one. Danny, there's only three there, but take it away.
God suffered cruel death, which he descended in hell, rose again, ascended to heaven. Each following year, there was a great festival in commemoration of his resurrection, in the very words, "The Lord is risen," were followed the news. The festival ended with the celebration of his ascension in sight of his worship.
So, again, we're getting patterns, right? Adonis dies, he's raised from the dead. They would gather together, they'd have a meal, and they would say to one another, Adonis is risen. And they would all say, he is risen indeed. No, I don't know if they would do that or not. But they would echo these phrases, right? All right, then we get Mithra. Now, Mithra is interesting because Mithra was one of the lesser gods came over from Persia and was important, but he was co-equal with the supreme being. So already we're starting to get some parallels there. He had many attributes, but he was primarily the defender of truth. For in Mithra, all truth resides. In Avestia, the sacred book of Iran, Mithra is represented as the celestial light. So Mithra is now what? He is light and truth. Joyce, you want to pick it up from there?
He emerges from the rock and goes for heaven with 4 white horses. When the night falls, he still illumines surface of the earth, ever walking, ever watching.
So the darkness is, even the darkness is light to him. Okay, keep going, Joyce.
He is not any star, but a spirit of light, ever wakeful, watching with 100 eyes. He hears all and sees all, none can deceive.
So he knows when you're sleeping. He knows when you're awake. He knows if you've been bad or good. So be good for Mithra's sake is the message here. There is nothing new under the sun. All right, keep going.
Was one of the great centers of his worship.
This is going to become critical in a bit.
Many separate designations. Day spring from on high, the light, the sun of righteousness.
Starting to sound familiar again? Okay, keep going.
Baked in Mithra. It is also interesting to notice that since Mithra was addressed as Lord, Sunday must have been the Lord's Day. It is also to be noticed that our Christmas, December 25th, was the birthday of and was only taken over in the 4th century as the date actually unknown of the birth of Jesus. Baptism and the communion meal were important parts of the ritual of the Jews.
Mithra, while Mum was Mum and Adonis was the perfect man, Mithra was a bull. Yes, and hence baptism of blood. So what they would do was to baptize. We have archaeological. It's basically a grate, and you'd go underneath, and the bull would stand on the grate, and then you would go naked, and then the priest would slit the bull's throat, and then the blood would bucket down onto you, and then you'd be baptized in blood, and then you'd come out covered in blood. What are you noticing here? These are just three, but these are the three most important. What do you notice?
It's very similar to Christianity. It's
Scarily close. Yeah. This is the Lord's Day. That
Is all of this obviously passed after Christ was on earth?
Yeah, well, some of this comes in beforehand. Yeah, some of it predates ideas. Some of it, like especially like Mithra, he goes back quite a ways, and so does Adonis. So some of these predate, some of these come alongside. Some of them around the same time. Some would speculate that Mithra worship eventually becomes so dominant, or so some would say powerful enough that it might have replaced Christianity, because ultimately Christianity persecutes Mithra worship, makes it illegal. Under the Romans later on, when Christianity becomes the dominant religion in the empire, they actually persecute Mithra. Mithra was also unique that it was only men.
So how do they know all that stuff that it was so saying it didn't happen before priesthood?
How what?
How would they know to be so?
Well, that, okay. Oh, good. Oh, hang on. Yeah, good. This is, by the way, Mithra worship is the main religion of the Roman army. Bulls, blood, power, death. This is a very masculine, and there are no records of any female names within Mithra registries. It's where the other ones, Adonis and the female, were far more popular and engaged people at every level. All right, good question. I want to read you one quote from Dr. Shirley Jackson, and I had to put his picture there so you know that this is a man, because there is a Dr. Shirley Jackson case. I think she's a physicist or something of renown. It's not the same person. I guess Shirley was. Following the lead of the Apostle Paul, the Christian missionaries on Gentile soil finally made of Christianity a more appealing religion than any of the mystery cults. This was accomplished not by any slavish process of imitation, but by a serious attempt to meet better the specific religious needs the mysteries had awakened and nourished, and by phrasing religious assurances more convincingly by similar terminology. So the debate is one of the two. There's the secular theory is that Christianity really is nothing more than the mystery religions piled together. That Paul, who was from Tarsus, and Tarsus, the home of the bull, and that what Paul did was Paul syncretized all of this together and made a new religion, called it Christianity. And all he did was he sanitized the mystery religions and basically grew them all and just created his own religion. That's the secular argument. What's the other possibility that I think is actually? Who would want a counterfeit version of Christianity? See,
Yeah.
these are satanic worship. These are all satanic. This is Satan's game plan to undermine Christianity by creating counterfeits. Because what does Paul say? Satan appears as an angel of light, right? To deceive. And so we do get a bit of syncretism later on. Because what happens is the church says, all right, we gotta do something with this December 25th worship thing. We'll throw that all out, and now we're going to worship Christ on that day. So the church starts to incorporate some of these dates, but not the practices. right? What's the cartoon? Oh, I'll have to use it for next week. It's not fresh in my mind. But so yeah, I think there's some satanic deception at work here, laying the groundwork. And then the church does pull in some of this, especially the dates, spring. I mean, Easter doesn't fall on March 25th. When does Easter fall on? It moves around, right? Yeah. Why does it move around? Yeah, it falls Passover. So Easter's tied to the Jewish calendar, not to the pagan calendar. Just so happens that a spring festival is a good time for everybody. If you're going to talk about new life and new birth, good time to have it in spring, right? December 21st, getting past the darkest night of the year into the light starting to shine, kind of a handy time to have a holiday. And so it was, and then the church said, well, let's kind of sanitize this and do it on that date. But I mean, some of the language is fascinating. The Lord be with you. Also,
because it was satanic, that's how they knew.
Exactly. The clearest example of this, and I'll work for Gnosticism, is the Roman Caesar is Lord. And Pax Romana, which was the peace of Rome. Right? So what do we say? Christ is Lord. And the peace of Christ. So the Romans would say, Pax Romana. And the Christians would say, Pax Christos. And they would just shout it back and echo, right? No, it's the peace of Christ may rule in your heart. They would say, Kairos or Caesar is Kurios. So the Christians would say, Christos is Kurios. And of course, they would get in trouble for that, right? So there are times that Christianity takes these pagan ideas, and what does it do? It redeems them. It uses the common vernacular. You ever see those funky Christian T-shirts? Like instead of like Coca-Cola, it says like, I don't know, what are some of the cheesy Christian T-shirts? Remember those? Instead of Nike, they would have like a Jesus logo, or they would basically kind of use a marketing thing and just kind of twist a little bit to make it Christian. And that's kind of cool. In a loose sense, it's kind of what's happening here. Are we co-opting, or are we? What are we doing here? We're just taking it. Yeah. This is ours, right? It's like every day belongs to the Lord. We can celebrate every day. We can take any holiday we want because they're all his anyways. If somebody has a holiday, well, Mother's Day, yeah, that's ours. We're taking that one. Father, yeah, we're taking that one. That one's ours. Yeah, you like Halloween? That's ours now. We're just gonna, because we have that authority. All things belong to him. All right. So this is in the church. And it's starting to filter in. So they're saying, oh, Jesus. Oh, that's Adonis. Exactly. And they're moving Jesus out of the way. And they're saying, oh, Mary, that's her, born of a virgin. Right? Oh, Jesus, he's actually the bull. They go, no, he's the lamb. So this starts to filter. Okay, the last one we got to wrap this up. Sorry, is Gnosticism. I've got a lot of pages. I'm going to sum it up real quick. Gnostics believed, and we're not going to do all these pages to run out of time, but I do want you guys, because I want to pull this in a thread tonight, that the world had been created by evil. So let's just jump down here. God is a pure spirit being, and so all matter, including human flesh, is evil. So flesh is evil. Spirit is good. So anything of the flesh is inherently evil. There's no good. So when Paul says, in my flesh is no good thing, they say, that sounds Gnostic. See how it filters into it? And people pick it up? That the created world, this material world, was made by a lesser God. And this God's nature was corrupt. And this inferior God is the God of the Old Testament. I'm just going to find one here. Here we go. They said that Yahweh of the Old Testament created evil, while the serpent, so far from being wicked, was engaged in warning Eve against his deceptions. For a long time, the supreme deity allowed this false deity free play, and at last he sent his son to inhabit a temporal body of the man Jesus to liberate the world from the false teachings of Moses. Hence, Gnostic Christians believe that the God of the Old Testament, the God of the Jews, was, with its tough and harsh covenant, is inferior to the creator God of the world. And in order to escape and embrace the truth, you must escape creation. Jesus was sent to provide knowledge required to break free from this temporal and physical world. Boy, I've got a lot of material here, and I'm not going to go through it all, but I'm going to sum it up. So, the heart of Gnosticism is this, is that this flesh is evil down here. This is flesh. And spirit is pure and good. And what you would do through a series of initiation rites, behaviors, practices, memorizing things, was you would slowly ascend to become a pure spirit being. So you are now 100% all flesh, right? But you do your thing, and then after the next initiation, now you might be 99% flesh and 1% spirit being. This is pretty good. And slowly, now you're not as hungry as you used to be. So you can fast a little. So now I'm going to fast for 30 days too, and that kills off my flesh, so that my spirit can now I've ascended. Now I'm about 2/3 flesh and a 1/3 spirit being. Well, if I can get about halfway, I can fast most of the time. I can become a breatharian. You know what breatharians are? They believe that all the nutrients you need are in the air around you. You just have to breathe. You don't need any food. You can become a breatharian. Yeah. This is a good theory for about a month, and then it kind of starts to fall apart pretty bad. And then ultimately, you would achieve pure spirit enlightenment, and you would leave your flesh behind. Now, Hercules, whose father was Zeus and mother was whoever she was, he was half and half. So he was halfway down here. And these are called aeons, the tiers. So angels are here, right? They're pure spirit beings. Humans are here. And there's all these realms and half God, half man, somewhat spirit. And they believe that Jesus was a pure spirit being who at his baptism, inhabited the flesh of the man named Jesus. So the Christ ascended into and took possession of the body of the man Jesus. And then just before he died, the Spirit left him, and the body of Christ stayed on the cross. Into your hands I give my spirit. So the Christ leaves Jesus, and the man Jesus dies on the cross. So they were teaching through a series of rituals and secret. Gnosis just means to know, the word knowledge. Through a series of rituals and secret, like the Masons, right? These secret rites, you would ascend and you become an ascending master. That's Gnosticism at its heart. They also believe that Paul was a Gnostic, by the way, and they claim that Paul was the founding father of Gnosticism. The Gnostics. Yeah, the followers of this religion. All right, I'm sorry, I kept you an extra 10 minutes. I don't mean to, but I want to sum it up. These three forces, then, of Jewish mysticism, that is, this ascending and descending to heaven via angels, the Roman mystery religions, which were like the secret sauce for being born again, and then Gnosticism, which is salvation based on secret knowledge that the average person couldn't receive. And so Paul says, they deceive you, they judge you based on this. All of these became the influences then into the Colossian church. All right, let's put it in today's context. Are there people who teach that you can ascend to heaven and get the secrets of the universe? Absolutely, right? Are there people that believe that you can be, through certain rituals and actions, have your sins forgiven? Sure, you follow these paths, you do these rituals, you eat this food, drink this cup, or whatever it is. I don't mean to say that in a Christian sense, but then you can be forgiven and you can then understand the mysteries of the universe. And are there people who believe that flesh is evil and that only the spirit is good? Okay. You don't want to be too worldly, right? The irony is that Judaism teaches what about the flesh? Remember Judaism? What do they do when they get together? They party, they eat, they drink, they dance, right? We're reading Jeremiah in Bible study today, and he talks about the food and the music and all these celebrations, and we see, this is good. Right? So Gnosticism teaches that this stuff, sarke, this flesh, is bad. Therefore, you should live a certain restrained life. Now, I'm not talking about living this, licentious life. And that's these ascetic practices that they would teach people. So the Gnostics had two views toward the flesh. One was complete denial of it. Live like a dog, drink water, eat meat. That's it. Live in a hole in the ground. Or else, because the flesh is inherently evil and only the spirit is good, what can I do with my flesh now?
Destroy it.
Destroy it or anything out. And they would say, this is kind of a gross quotation, but anything below the neck isn't sin because your spirit resides and your spirit man. And so Paul in Corinthians says, when a man joins with a woman in sex, the two become one spirit, right? He's arguing against Gnosticism here. John says that which we've seen with our hands, which we've touched, which we've held, is Christ. He's arguing against Gnosticism. And so we see Paul and Peter and all these, and John arguing against this false doctrine. We just don't hear it until we hear it. You go, oh, that's a Gnostic argument. And so this world of mysticism, mystery, and super saints and super apostles with super knowledge, what is today? I've ascended to heaven. Come buy my book, come to my seminar, join my thing, and I'll tell you the truth about how to overcome. I'll give you the victor's secret, and I'll explain to you the secret of material success. But you got to come and you have to buy this from me. Right? So the link between first century Colossae and 21st century Canada isn't as far as we think it is. We have air conditioning, but we're still airheads. So it's my last thought for you. All right, we'll pick up the book itself next week, which begins with the most beautiful hymn about who Jesus is.